Hi guys, it's Great Britain here. Welcome to my Draw My Life video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. So it all started in the 1300s. Everybody was hanging out, farming, living life, till all of a sudden, Fatty Fly buzzes in with the plague, and people get the Black Plague and they start dying. People were dying left and right. It was a bloodbath. Everybody was just really sad and depressed, but then all those same people who were sad and depressed started dying too, so then there's nobody to be sad. A little later on, we were just hanging out, minding our own business across the sea from France, and so we realized that France was actually our country as well. So, like any good country would do, is we sent in our troops to France in order to reclaim our land. But if France was being annoying, they kind of barred us, so we just fought them, and we had a war. I mean, it was pretty sporadic throughout the years, and no one really ended up winning. But there's tons of death, and it was kind of depressing, and just more death. Alright, so after the 100 Years' War during the 1400s and 1500s, people kind of realized they had brains and they're actually kind of intellectual. So began wearing cool hats with feathers, and reading and writing tons of books, playing new music. It was a whole shebang, cultural shock. Pretty cool. Not as cool as Italy though, but cool. One of the most famous Renaissance thinkers of the time was Thomas More, and he kind of believed that people were all good and just really enjoyed each other's company. So he wrote a book on utopian societies, but believed it was pretty unrealistic, so didn't really happen. So during the 16th century, this was during the Reformation, so as society started to change, so did religion and politics, and this is when Henry VIII, the second Tudor monarch, came into power of England, and he married his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. However, he really wanted to divorce her, so that's how he started the Church of England. But once he was divorced from Catherine, he just kept marrying other women and divorcing those women because he could, but in the end they all died, so did he. Tragic. After King Henry VIII's death, his first daughter, with Catherine of Aragon, Bloody Mary, came into power and tried to revert the church back to Catholicism, but the people weren't having it, and it was just a hot mess. Then Elizabeth I came into power. She was a lot cooler. She had the Elizabethan settlement, which reinforced the Church of England, but allowed Catholics to live as long as they didn't voice their Catholic opinions, so people were happy again. A little later on, during the 1500s and 1600s, constitutionalism happened and people were stoked. Yay! However, when King Charles I came into power, he decided that, he's too cool for Parliament and just, supreme. So that angered the people, and they rose up and there was civil war. And of course, whenever there's a war, tons of death, bloodbaths, people were dying left and right. But in the end, the people ended up winning. Woo! They were super stoked and happy. But that didn't last very long because the Protectorate happened. And that was led by Oliver Cromwell, who was a pretty strict dude. And he ran a militaristic society. And then under that kind of dictatorship, the people became sad again. And they really wanted to start a new government.
So after Cromwell, there was the Stuart Restoration, where Charles II came back into power. They brought the monarchy back, and that was okay. But then his brother, James II, came into power, and people didn't like James II very much because he was Catholic, and that was a problem. So, and they were unhappy. So then, in the 1600s, they had the Glorious Revolution in Britain, where William of Orange and his wife Mary took over the English throne, and James II left, and the people were happy because now they could be Protestant. Woo! So under William of Orange, Parliament became supreme, and they passed the English Bill of Rights, and the people actually had rights, so they were happy. So next, in the 1600s and 1700s, science started progressing, and we had Isaac Newton, the homeboy in England, who was sitting under a tree at Cambridge when an apple fell on his head, and he discovered gravity, which was pretty cool, and it helped us in physics. So, as the 1700s continued in Britain, people started to think more again, and we had people like Thomas Hobbes, who thought that people were bad, as well as people like John Locke, who thought that people were inherently good. And so this change in thought transitioned into the Enlightenment, in which people started thinking more about ways to change politics and social life. So in the 1800s, Napoleon took over France and wanted to take over all of Europe, including Britain, but we barred him, so he couldn't get in the Battle of Trafalgar, and then he never tried again. That was pretty cool. So after that, in 1815, Napoleon fell at the Battle of Waterloo, and the rest of Europe was pretty happy. France might not have been, but we were happy, so that was good for Britain. So backtracking a little bit to the 1700s, Britain had been advancing some of its agricultural tools, and this made farming easier, which made lives better for people, meaning that they had more food, which is good because then they weren't starving. So they had food like corn, and this was known as the Agricultural Revolution. Woo! There was food. So with all of this extra food, the quality of life improved in Britain, and with this, Britain had all the factors of production that allowed it to industrialize. So they started creating new technology and built a lot of factories. So with all the factories that it had, Britain was able to speed ahead in the industrial race in front of other countries, and they built railroads, which improved transportation. Chugga chugga, choo choo! Chugga chugga, choo choo!
Despite the successes of the Industrial Revolution, there were also many downsides. The working class was forced to work for long hours under poor conditions and had little breaks. In addition to that, kids were especially exploited in the factory workplace because they didn't need to be paid. Eventually, there were child protection laws. As industrialization spread, Britain moved into India and Africa in order to exploit their natural resources. However, the native people were super not down to work for Britain because they were exploited and all of their hard work went to British factories.
So then we hit the 1900s and knock knock.
Who's there?
It's World War I. So the First World War started in the Balkans, and Britain ended up getting involved due to entanglement in alliances. And so they sent all their soldiers into France to fight against Germany, but then they got stuck in the trenches and they became sad because a lot of people died, like every single war. So after the war, they created the League of Nations, but that kind of failed because we had another world war. But anyways, it also failed because there was global depression and all of Europe was really sad. So then people were sad and knock knock.
Who's there?
It's World War II.
After World War I, Germany was pretty salty because they kind of got the bad end of the deal. So when Hitler took power, he sent fatty airplanes over to Britain and started bombing the crap out of them. And we weren't down for that. So Winston Churchill, the big kahuna, helped us win, and then we were victorious. After the war, we had some beef with our ally Russia, and the metaphorical Iron Curtain fell over all of Europe, which even involved America at this time.
But then the Iron Curtain collapsed when the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, and East and West were joined together again. So in the late 20th century, England joined the European Union, and all of Europe was pretty happy, and they were holding hands. But then in the 2000s, this year, Britain was feeling a little pissy with the rest of Europe, and we had Brexit, and they left the European Union, and people were sad in the rest of Europe.
Alrighty guys, thanks y'all for watching. The end.